It's honestly really disappointing because something that's been such a core tenet of what America is, like since its creation, has been free speech. And I think such an active and aggressive form of censorship is like the antithesis of what this country is about.
In my opinion, I think censorship of this man is very important to look at because obviously free speech is a big thing for the First Amendment. And if we do have a president that wants to support the people, then even though he has a green card, he should still be able to stay in the U.S. no matter who he was affecting. And obviously, I don't know too much of the details, but I believe it was somewhat of a peaceful protest. So if that's the case, it feels more like of just pushing away negativity against the government and less about trying to work with a population to help grow the United States as a whole.
Regarding the whole Columbia incident, obviously, I have very biased opinions, but I think in the end, we have been brought up in a country where we have been told since elementary school, ever since we've been learning about history, that we can say what we want and there will be no repercussions against that. And what our government and what is currently going on is like counteracting everything we have learned since like our foundation of school, since primary school. We have been like I said, we've been told these things, and what's going on right now is such a clear indication that we are no longer upholding those values, and that is just such a stark contrast. And I feel that we, as even just as high schoolers, is what we're doing right now, we need to also be able to speak up for what we think is right, whether we agree with what is going on, whether we don't. I think we have a right to speak up against it or for it. And I think currently our government is censoring that, and that is obviously not something that like upholds what America stands for as like a country.
Yeah, so my perspective on this, especially as somebody who teaches about like rising authoritarian states in my IB history class, that's literally one of the major focuses of our entire first semester. The actions that have been taken against Mr. Khalil is just, to me, should be a really big warning sign for us and anybody who supports democratic ideals. When we look at the emergence of authoritarian states, a lot of times they try to delegitimize institutions, which part of that is like the legal system and an objective judicial process. And the fact that this is an individual who is largely here legally, who has a green card to be here, and yet is still being restricted from just basic free speech rights, the right to petition the government, the right to assemble, should be very troubling to us because not only is his First Amendment rights being restricted, but also his rights to due process are being limited. And that starts to become a really scary slope because things like that, they usually don't just stop with a single individual. And we're starting to see more and more people being caught up and being swept up in deportation rings without any due process being offered them, and people that are even legally here and have a right to be here, whether it is through a visa or a green card, or in some cases, even some people as U.S. citizens are being deported back to countries without any form of due process. And like I said, as somebody who studied the rise of authoritarianism in governments around the world, that it should be a very troubling trend that raise red flags for all Americans.
I have really mixed feelings about it, but the strongest feeling I have is definitely anger and confusion. I never really expected that something like this would be possible, especially after such a intense time in which people were preaching about the importance of freedom of speech and about the importance of transparency for the government. I think that was actually a big component of the Republican platform in the most recent election, that they felt that Biden wasn't being transparent and that they could do more by implementing policies that were more beneficial to the people. But the event of the arrest, along with some of the other recent arrests, I think a lot of them have come without explanation and also without context, which I think is really counterintuitive, and I think it only breeds more fear instead of creating security. And if there were more like explanations or context prior to that, I think it would be a more justified decision. But as of right now, I'm mostly confused and slightly angry that the government is not willing to like trust its citizens when there is the potential fear that this could happen to anybody out there.